Okay, so I'm gonna challenge myself on this one, guys. No cussing and as little to no salt as possible. First of all, I've been doing this video like every 3 months for the last year and a half, 2 years. You know, the pricing structure, we're gonna throw all that out. All we're gonna concentrate on right now is the fact that we have tiers to begin with, and you know how that affects the ships, the game, how that everything balances. The first thing I want to bring up is, you know, you've got to remember, you know, take the development time that's been spent on the ships already, especially what they call the tier 1 starter ships, which is the Mustang, and then you've got the Aurora series, and then you got the tier 2 starters, you know, the Avenger and the Reliant. So, you know, let's kind of just focus this in, you know, and you've got different tiers like the Gladius compared to the Gladiator, compared to the Hornet, compared to the Super Hornet. Let's just start with the fact that the way the game's going to be. You know, a lot of people, before it started, before the tier system, if you don't know, we didn't used to have a tier system. We had all the ships were viable, and I've kind of mentioned this in my other videos. The idea was that you could have an Aurora, you know, specifically, let's say the LN, because it is the fighter variant. The idea when the game was pitched, that ship would have, you know, strength and a weakness. Like, one of the biggest strengths about it is it's so common, it'll be cheap and fast to repair. And, you know, the idea was that the Mustang, you know, as a contra to that, as like a counterpoint, it was a little bit harder to find. It was made with special alloys. It'd be a little bit more expensive to repair and a little bit more, you know, time consuming to repair, depending on where you're at. But the idea was that, you know, you could take this LN and you could keep it. You know, 3 years into the PU, you've been flying, you've already got a Sabre, you know, you got a Hornet, you've got whatever else, you know, the Hurricane. It wasn't even back then, but, you know, they hadn't even designed the Hurricane yet. The idea was that each ship, you know, you could get components, you could switch them out, you could upgrade them, you could change them. You know, the idea was you're always balancing heat and power. You know, you were balancing heat and power draw. And that was the idea, you know, that every ship was viable and that you had a reason to keep all your ships. You needed a whole hangar full. And the way it's going now is, you know, with the tier system, you don't have that. You have ships. I mean, honestly, if you're going to start off as a new citizen, you've already got people saying that, you know, if you got a starter ship, either the Mustang or the Aurora, like you shouldn't be able to fly it. Like, you shouldn't actually expect to do missions in it. You need to crew somebody else's ship and just, you know, grind on past that. Is that a game we really want? You need to stop and think about that. You know, I'll be honest with you, just kind of put your pride in check right now and stop and think about the end game. Do you really want to have garbage throwaway ships in the game at all? I mean, what purpose do they serve? Yeah, and it comes back to people comparing this to, you know, regular MMO, you know, dungeon crawlers like, you know, Warcraft. Your cheap training weapons are your starter ships. You need to just ditch them as quick as possible. I mean, if you stop and think about that, it's kind of like Elite Dangerous. Now, you have a few exceptions in that game. Like, you have the Explorers, where, you know, it's actually best to take the Asp until you engineer it is the best Explorer ship. And the rest are just throwaway garbage. Like me, like, you know, personally, I held on to my Hauler and my Adder for a while, you know, after getting out of the Sidewinder. And I think I've still got the Adder, but I sold the Hauler, you know, moved up to the Type 6. And then I have a Type 7 I've still got. Went ahead and got the Anaconda and got the Python, and, you know, I got the Vulture. And I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm just wasting money. I needed to sell those ships because, you know, that's a tier system. Is once you get to a certain level, like, the other ships don't make sense. The only thing in Elite that kind of changes that out, which was you can compare to Star Citizen, is, you know, Elite goes by landing pad size. You have the small pads and you have the medium and large. You know, sometimes some stations will only have the small and the medium, and so the large ships can't land. And that was kind of the idea that Star Citizen was aiming for, except for jump points. The jump points, you were going to have small, medium, and large jump points. And the idea is, if, you know, you're hauling cargo, you want to find the smallest ship with the largest cargo, you know, in comparison to the other ships in the line. And, you know, they've said before the Freelancer was going to be able to fit through small. They changed it to medium. And I mean, really, you're running out some of these ships that no one's going to fly just because it's in an odd place and you grind right past them. And that's in other games too. Freelancer did that. You know, there's a lot of games, space games, you know, X3 Reunion. There's ships that you just grind right past, you never even fly, and that's wasted development time. And that's really, I mean, there's no point. There's no point in making those ships. Just don't even bother with, you know, designing them. And that's the thing is, you know, we're all happy to have, you know, 30 ships, 50 ships, 100 ships, but the way it's going, the tier system, you're going to be keeping about 5 of those at the end. And like I said, you'll grind right past the others. You know, for me personally, if the way it's set up now, like if I had, like, I've got the LN, or if I had one of the Mustangs, you know, at this point, like, you would grind right past the Avenger, right past the 300 series. You wouldn't even worry about it. You would just save up and grind past them to get something you want, you know, like the Cutlass or the Freelancer. Or if you're into combat, you know, you would skip the Gladius, to be honest with you. You would. You would just grind right past that till you at least get a hold of a Gladiator, if not a Hornet or a Super Hornet or a Sabre. And I don't want that kind of game. I want a game to where I like a ship because it looks good, I think, you know, or I think it handles kind of cool, or it's got a neat concept. I want to be able to upgrade that ship and fly it, and it have a use and not be just garbage, basically. And I think a lot of you guys are missing the point that, and people are saying, oh, well, the tiers only matter in Arena Commander because, you're getting points. And no, because if it's in the PU, the ship, the way they handle the game now is the PU and Arena Commander share the same stats. And it's basically the same ship. If you're going to be taking what you can find out in Arena Commander and taking to the PU, that's how it's going to be. You're going to have starter ships that just they don't have any punch to them. You have to be a seasoned pilot to kill another starter ship in them. And it's just not going the way I think it should. And that's the thing, is that's, all these videos, all the assault videos I have are my opinion. And granted, it just seems like people, judging by the comments, people don't understand that, and I talked about this in my Assault 2 video. I shouldn't have to prove to people that are coming in to, they make comments, and it's the same copy-paste stuff. Guys, I've been a backer for getting ready to hit 3 years in August. I've been through all the patches. I've been through all the imbalances we had before we had Wreck, before we had the Mustangs in the game. Back when, that's another thing too, is I was in there back when we had auto-aim gimbals. But that's for the flight model and all that. That's probably another video. This is just on ship tiers. The second thing I want to bring up is if you're basing how well your ship should perform on money, you've got some outliers that need to be rectified. Because if you've got one of the big three, you're not worried about performance because you've pretty much got it. You've got the shields and the armor and the hard points and the speed turning rates to take care of anything. The issue is we have ships left over from before the pricing tier meant anything, before we actually had a tiering system, and that's when you come up like the oddballs, like the Mustang Delta. Like at its price point, it does not perform. At its price point, if you want to do the performance per dollar, it doesn't add up to any other ship. It's way too expensive for what it is. And that's simply because the tier system wasn't in when it was pitched in concept and sold. And you've got other ships out there like the 300 series that just don't make any sense. And they're redoing the 300s, but it's going to be like the other ships. They're not going to do much. Everybody keeps comparing, the update's going to be like the Cutlass. I hope it changes a lot with the 300 series, because right now they're kind of redundant and they don't really, they're just out there. They're oddballs. The Mustang Delta. I guess I feel like people just, at this point, like I said, they're you've got the people that have soaked a lot of money in this and they're wanting that advantage. And then, I've got people in my comments. I had one guy contradicted himself in 30 minutes of posting. In his first post, he said that, it's not pay to win because it's not a game yet. And that, even though it's supposed to be testing, honestly, the rec system, none of that makes sense to me. I understand they want us to actually have experience flying the ships before we can say they're garbage, but at this point, if you're just starting a new pilot and you're wanting to test other ships, the rec system, good luck. Because you're going to have to save up rec after round, or race, or try to find some way to speed up getting rec back. REC, I call it rec. And, you're going to be stuck in a hole trying to get better weapons, and we don't even have, it's just the components aren't there. It's just nothing. I see where they're wanting to go with it, but none of it lines up because they don't have all the pieces. So you end up with the guys who already have the nice ships, have all the wreck, and the guys that have the bad ships, quote unquote starter ships, don't have any wreck. And I can tell you from flying the LM and watching the different changes and making it less and less viable, just the gap between the Avenger and the Aurora LN is ridiculous. And, like I've said in other videos, I'm not a good pilot. I'm not going to pretend that I am. But the leap in my effectiveness between the Aurora LN and the Avenger was astounding. And in the same jump between the Avenger and the Super Hornet. I'll just be honest with you. In the Hornet, the Super Hornet, when I wrecked it, I didn't have to worry about evading anymore. I didn't try to evade. I just tanked it. And that's, to me, honestly, like I said, before the tiering system, in the Hornet, you were still balancing power and weapons. You were balancing heat. You had to worry about turn rates. It just took a little more tactic and skill. And now I feel like that's lost. But, I'm not even going to go into gimbals. I'm not even going to worry about in this video because what I'm concentrating on is specifically what I'm concentrating on is the tier system and how I feel like it's going to affect the whole game. Because that's where I'm coming from. If the MMO releases, and 8 months later, everybody and their brother is flying the same 5 ships because there's no other viable alternative. Because you just can't, you don't want to fly anything that has less shield and slower and, and smaller hit points. Like, there's no point. Now, granted, like I said, the jump points were going to be separating ships, but when you've got these medium and small fighters that basically, there's nothing better, like it doesn't matter about jump points anymore because of the tier system. Now, if you change that and, if you had an Aurora LN with a good pilot and the right combination could fly as effectively as the Avenger or even, stretching it, the Gladius or even the Hornet. Can you imagine flying out and then people flying different ships because they want them? I mean, you know, forget the style points. I mean, say you actually love your Mustang Delta. You love it to death and you want it to be viable. Okay, at this point, there's no point in having it. You need to just either try to downgrade, which they still haven't done yet, or CCU it, upgrade it to something else. You know, cross chassis upgrade. And I'm lost. I mean, like I said, I'm sitting over here. I've been on the sidelines. I've been playing the betas. Like I said, I've been making this same video month after month after month, and I just haven't released it because I've never been happy with it. And I'm still, like, this video I'm not very happy with. I'm not as concise as I want to be, you know, and it's going to be one of those, I get it edited. If I get it up, you know, a week later, be like, oh, I didn't talk about this. I didn't talk about that. But I mean, honestly, just judging by the comments, you guys, you know, some of the people watching my videos at least, and of course on the RSI archive we've got now, the forum archive, you know, some of these people, They want the starter ships. They want every ship under whatever they purchased, be it a Cutlass or a Super Hornet or even a Gladius. They want all the other ships under it to be garbage and it and up to be fantastic. It doesn't make any sense because I know, and granted, I've asked this question in many videos and I've never posted them because I've never gotten those to where I want them. But I mean, let me ask you a question. Let's say, for instance, there was just a solid $50 buy-in, a solid $50 pledge, and you had a choice to choose between the Aurora, you know, the Avenger, the Mustang, or the Hornet series. You know, if they were all the same price, would you have paid as much as you've paid now? You know, granted, however much you paid for your Hornet or your Super Hornet, if you could have gotten that ship and that package for the same price as an Aurora, would you have spent as much money as you have? Now, granted, some of you are going to say, oh, yeah, absolutely, but just stop and think about it. You don't have to answer me in the comments. You don't have to answer me anywhere. I just want you to ask yourself that question and be honest. Would you have spent the $100 and something if you could have gotten the same ship at the same price point as a starter ship? If the answer is no, then I guess the tier system's done good for CIG. You know, and granted, I mean, that's kind of why they keep doing it, is because people keep buying the nicer ships because they perform better. You know, at the same time, like I said, I don't want it to be just a handful of ships is all that's really viable in the PU. I don't want to have to get in the Aurora and then grind and skip the Avenger because it's not viable, and skip the Mustang series because they're not viable, skip the 300 series because they're not viable. You know, aim for a Cutlass that can kind of, and that's the thing, is you've either got fighting ships or you've got cargo ships or you've got some of them like the mining and the search and rescue. But I mean, honestly, I just feel like the tier system has destroyed the game because forget the replayability. You know, if you're looking at logging in hours and hours and hours, after a certain amount of time, you're going to be stuck in the same ship. And that's the thing. If you play with buddies, man, like, okay, finally you get your Super Hornet and, you know, or the Hurricane. There's nothing better. And because of the tier system, you can't make other ships as viable as it. So you and your 5 buddies are all flying the same ship. Like, that's boring to me. I'd rather log in and, you know, somebody likes the way the Avenger flies or the way it looks, you know, the cockpit in it. And then somebody else likes their you know, Mustang Beta because of the cabin. You know, like I said, man, I just feel like they're not viable anymore. Especially after you put a little time into it. And I feel like that's such a waste because I feel like this game had so much more to offer. And that was the pitch I kind of got behind, was that, you know, it was sort of a paper, rock, scissors. And, you know, pilot skill meant a lot. And then components helped a lot. And, you know, like I said, kept the game open. I remember back in the day when, you know, you were playing Arena Commander and the Aurora LN had a lot of punch. It had 2 size 3s and 2 size 2s. And people, before, they would just spam every Aurora on there. And then you got to where the LN, it got to a point to where it was viable. And people would leave the LN alone because it was, with the small cross section when it was facing you, it was a pretty rough target. But now, man, I mean, it's made of paper. Nobody cares. And I feel like that's kind of lost because I got bored. Honestly, when I wrecked the Super Hornet, I got bored. I mean, you know, granted that all the desync and hit detection and everything, take that out of the equation. I mean, basically, you'd line up the pips. You know, I was flying fixed joystick. I'd line up the pips, and it was pretty much over in a little bit. Like, granted, like I said, there's some you could just hit and not do any damage to. You know, like I said, it's beside the point. I just feel like we're limiting ourselves. I feel like if you're trying to push the tier system, you know, you're kind of focused on the now and not the later. Because if you cared about the later, you would, I guess you'd be like me, wouldn't you? You would not want the tier system. You would want every ship to be viable. You'd like to have a entire, you know, a hangar full of different crap just because you like the way it looks or the way it flies or just the idea behind it, the concept or the cockpit or. But no, I mean, it's just going to be rinse and repeat. You know, I got this ship, here's the next tier up. I either grind past it, or if I want to get it to try to, you know, increase my, you know, credits per hour, I'll sell the ship I'm in now, buy it. That's awful. for what this game's aiming to be. I mean, you want the need to have all these ships, but at this point, like, it's a waste of time and money. It's I mean, like I said, it's one of the downsides of Elite is there is a tier system, and that's, like I said, you grind right past ships, you sell your old ones, you don't look back. That's awful. I don't want that. And then I get to the argument where people say, well, I spent $300 on this game or $250, and I want something more out of it than what you got for putting in. At the time I paid, it was $50. It was $45 for the ship and both the single player and multiplayer game, and then it was $5 for the beta access, the beta key to get into the Arena Commander. And I can understand that. Granted, when it was pitched, it was supposed to be, look, guys, you get a different ship as a thank you, and it was all, like I said before, the tier system. If you want to take out the tier system now, you have a lot of people, like I said, put in a lot of money, they want something more out of it. Give them other in-game, if you rebalance all the ships and make everything viable in the long run, give those people something. I don't know. I mean, we had the whole argument, is LTI lifetime insurance, what's it? And apparently it's not a big deal, but they sell LTI token ships every so often. Look, find another way to give those backers something different. Put them, give them a special piece of in-game something, cosmetic, please. Let's not do the performance crap. You know what? No, do the performance. Give them a special weapon, special shieldings for specific ships. Make it all available in the game in the end. I'm just trying to tell you guys, it's like some of the racing games. The games where you can balance the cars out and you have a garage full, you love, specific ones, you keep them, you paint them up, you love them. And then you think of some other racing games back in the day when you had tier systems, and it was you had this car, you raced, you can get this car, you sell the old car, and it's just, I don't want that. I mean, just like Freelancer. You grind right past all that crap. You got, like in Freelancer, you got the Rhino and Liberty Space, and then you grind right past that, and you get, a fighter, do a couple missions, they let you go, you let you off your leash to run around, you go buy the other bigger cargo ships, and it's just like that was so boring. Like, it was great back in the day, that now that I've seen you can do better than that, I don't like that. I don't know. Like, I feel like we limit ourselves way too much. I feel like the game, you're putting an end date on the game when you do that. Because, I mean, like right now, I just bought an Anaconda in Elite. And I mean, of course, that game's got its own crutch that you're grinding to get better ships, to grind to get the ships you want. And like I said, Star Citizen's heading down that same path. I mean, you're not going to keep any of the mid-grade or low-tier ships because you like them. I mean, they're going to be useless. You're going to be a flying target in them. You don't want to do that. And I think, like I said, I mean, if you balance out the ships to where they work in a tier system, you end up with just a handful of ships at the end that anybody's going to, in their right mind, would fly. Like I said, I feel like people are kind of looking at the now and looking at Arena Commander and, having the best ship when this game starts. But those are the people that are pigeonholing themselves even the most, to me. Because if you have it's a medium fighter Hornet, you have the medium fighter that can take a cargo box or can, you can do, like, where are you going to go from there? You going to go from a Hornet to what? A Constellation or an Idris or no? Or a Freelancer? You're not going to do that. And at this point, the only ships that are really balanced as far as in their own league are like the Sabre and Super Hornet. And I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like we're just we're going in circles. We've got, of course, the combat is the biggest aspect of the game because nothing else has been added yet. It's what 3.0 is supposed to bring as cargo, hopefully. I feel like just, they're basically just buffing out the top tier fighters and everything else is garbage. And people say, oh, well, when they add cargo and mining and everything, all the shit, it's not going to change anything, guys. You're still going to have the Aurora that hauls a shoebox-sized cargo and is made of paper. And you can't put very big weapons on it, and it's slower than Christmas. And then that's going to be going up against the Mustang Alpha, which holds less cargo. So it holds half a shoebox, and it's, even weaker, but it's faster. Well, it's supposed to be weaker, but it's not. The design philosophy on that one's odd. It's an alloy that's supposed to be lighter, a little bit weaker, but you're supposed to be more agile. And basically the Mustang just flies circles around the Aurora series, even the LN, and they have more hit points. And anyway, like I said, the tier system doesn't work. There's too many outliers. The Hornet, Super Hornet, and the Sabre, I mean, basically everything under that is garbage. Like, you got a few pilots, and like I said, the Avenger, I was making kills, I was killing some Hornets and Super Hornets and Sabres in the Avenger, but it wasn't, I wasn't tanking them out. I was doing tactics and flying like an idiot and was getting some kills. And I just feel like I said, the gap between the Avenger and the Aurora is ridiculous. There's a smaller gap, but a noticeable gap between the Aurora and the Mustang. And I feel like, for both the same price, like I said, it's like there's some of it makes sense in the tier system because it makes CIG money and they can do concept sales. But at the same time, man, you've got ships that just don't make any sense. And I feel like that's the issue I keep getting hung up on. As you've got people say, well, I paid more money, it needs to perform better. What about the Mustang Delta guys? Their rocket pods didn't work for a couple patches. Anything anybody said to them was upgraded to something else. Upgraded to, at least a Gladius. And then the Gladius got sucker punched a little bit, and it's not as good as it used to be. And then it was, you go buy the next ship up, which was a Hornet. And then if you've got a Hornet, why not go ahead and throw in and get a Super Hornet or a Sabre? And it was just, like I said, cyclic. It was just ridiculous. I feel like we're missing so much. I feel like we're limiting ourselves so much. I feel like the game is going to be a grind for ships. You get the ships and there's nothing else to do. I don't want that. I mean, like I said, I would like to log on and I got a buddy who's got a Cutlass because he loves it to death. I got a buddy who's got, a 300i because he just loves the fact that it's basically a BMW. I could be flying my, LN, or if I want to get, something else, you can't do that. It's going to be, I'm on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the fighters that can haul cargo and do it all and go through small jump points. I'm on scale 2 because, I've got the Mustang Alpha. I'm on number 2. I'm going to grind past 3, 4, and 5 and hit the Reliant and buy it because I can increase my credits per hour. And then I'm going to skip, this ship and the 300 ships, and I'm going to go up to the Cutlass, and then I'm going to grind right past the Freelancer. And you see what I'm saying? Instead of being, I'm in the market for a medium-sized cargo ship, I'm looking at the Cutlass, I'm looking at, the Aurora Clipper, I'm looking at, in comparing 3 or 4 ships, like, that one, holds a little bit more cargo than all the others, but this one, I like the way it looks, and, this one has better cooling, so I could run, similar size weapons, but fire them longer, or this one's got a better power plant, or that one's actually more fuel efficient. Like, none of that matters anymore, guys. You see what I'm saying? You don't have a choice anymore. You either choose to be in the ship that is not as good, or you choose the best ship. I don't like that. I don't want that.